The Middle Ages witnessed the birth of a completely new civilization across the European landscape. This era brought together noble warriors and mighty rulers, deep religious conviction and endless conflicts, remarkable cultural achievements and scholarly pursuits, bustling commerce and groundbreaking inventions. Together, these elements laid the groundwork for our modern world. This is the tale of how Europe came into being. During the first 200 years of the Common Era, the magnificent Roman Empire stretched across the entire Mediterranean basin. Romans called this period the Pax Romana, an age marked by remarkable stability, growing wealth, and widespread peace. The empire's inhabitants experienced a thriving cultural scene, decent living standards, and reasonable safety. Rome achieved this through its highly organized central government and sophisticated infrastructure networks. Far away in the empire's eastern territories, a revolutionary new faith emerged: Christianity. Starting as nothing more than a minor Jewish movement, Christianity gradually expanded throughout the predominantly pagan Roman territories. By the 4th century, Roman emperors themselves had converted, making Christianity the empire's official faith. Unfortunately, Rome's golden age was already ending. The empire faced mounting challenges: runaway inflation, devastating diseases, widespread hunger, and constant invasions. Governing such a vast territory from one central location had become utterly impossible. In the year 395, Roman leaders made a fateful decision to split the empire. The western half kept Rome as its headquarters, while the eastern portion was governed from Constantinople, later known as the Byzantine Empire. While the eastern territories remained urban, wealthy, and flourishing, the western lands grew increasingly rural, impoverished, and vulnerable. Its survival would prove brief. Deep within the untamed forests beyond the empire's boundaries, barbarian populations were migrating. These groups consisted mainly of Germanic tribes following charismatic warlords and their devoted warrior companions. These peoples pushed increasingly hard against the Rhine and Danube frontier rivers. With limited options available, Western Roman authorities began permitting their entrance. Eventually, the borders collapsed entirely, allowing numerous peoples to migrate and establish themselves throughout imperial lands. Whether considered welcome guests or hostile invaders, these populations divided Roman territories among themselves while imperial control disintegrated. In 476, a barbarian chieftain named Odoacer removed the final Western Roman emperor, the young Romulus Augustulus, from power. Though this child ruler possessed virtually no actual authority, his removal represents a symbolic turning point. The Western Roman Empire had ceased to exist. The period often called the Dark Ages had arrived. Romans, Christians, and barbarians, these three groups blended together to forge medieval European civilization. Around the year 500, Europe was divided among recently founded kingdoms governed by barbarian monarchs. Their ruling classes, combining both Roman and barbarian heritage, had slowly embraced Christianity. The most powerful kingdoms included the Ostrogothic realm in Italy, the Visigothic territories in Spain, and the Frankish lands in Gaul. However, these kingdoms lacked essential components needed for effective governance. The great metropolitan centers of ancient times stood largely abandoned, some reduced to ruins. Roman transportation networks deteriorated, destroying communication links and long-range commerce. Currency disappeared from circulation, eliminating the economic framework necessary for maintaining professional military forces. Literacy rates collapsed, crippling bureaucratic systems. Most significantly, peace and security vanished. This impoverished rural western region grew increasingly localized, fragmenting both politically and linguistically. During the early medieval centuries, it seemed pathetically weak compared to its more powerful neighbors. In the 6th century, Byzantine Emperor Justinian I launched an ambitious campaign to reconquer the West and restore Rome's former magnificence. But after seizing Italy from the Romanized Ostrogoths, the peninsula quickly fell to fresh invaders called the Lombards. The Byzantines had to accept that the separation between East and West was permanent. Soon they would acknowledge another division, this time between North and South. During the 7th century, Arab military forces swept through the Middle East and North Africa with breathtaking velocity, forging an enormous Islamic caliphate. Where one civilization previously dominated, now three existed: Islamic, Byzantine, and medieval European. For a short time in the 8th century, it appeared the fragile Western territories might be completely overwhelmed by the Caliphate. Muslim armies destroyed the Visigothic kingdom in Spain before launching raids into Francia. However, in 732, during the Battle of Tours, they suffered defeat at the hands of Frankish forces commanded by Charles Martel. Islamic expansion westward was stopped, and the triumphant Charles established a dynasty that would forever alter European history, the Carolingians. Charles Martel's son, Pepin the Short, seized control of the Frankish throne through a coup. He battled the Lombards in Italy, giving the Pope his own independent state. Pepin's son became the legendary Charlemagne. Upon claiming the Frankish throne in 768, Charlemagne spent decades conquering and expanding his domain. Eventually, he controlled the vast majority of Western Christendom. In the year 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. More than 3 centuries after Rome's collapse, the West possessed an emperor again. The Carolingian Empire became the medieval West's first major power, creating a lasting impact. Charlemagne supported an intellectual and cultural revival, the first of several medieval renaissances aimed at recovering the lost wisdom and culture of antiquity. The empire spread throughout the Western territories various political frameworks, institutions, titles, hierarchies, concepts, and ambitions. Most crucially, it promoted an ideal of a unified Christian West. These became the foundation stones of medieval civilization. The Carolingian Empire proved short-lived. The effort to establish centralized authority in the West struggled due to inadequate infrastructure, tiny cities, weak economies, limited administrative capacity, and poor communications. Following Charlemagne's death, his 3 grandsons fought among themselves, and in 843, through the Treaty of Verdun, they partitioned the Frankish Empire. The Middle Kingdom rapidly declined, leaving only West Francia, eventually becoming France, and East Francia, destined to become Germany. These kingdoms continued splintering and fragmenting, a process intensified by external threats. During the 9th and 10th centuries, fresh waves of invaders attacked the crumbling Carolingian territories from all directions. Vikings arrived from the north, navigating Europe's coastlines and rivers, conducting raids and terrorizing populations. The Magyars, commonly known as Hungarians, charged in from the east, pillaging vulnerable communities. Finally, Muslim pirates and raiders struck Europe's southern coastlines. Europe faced siege from all sides. As Western territories crumbled under repeated assaults, monarchs lost authority while local elites gained strength. Europe became covered with countless wooden fortifications, serving as fortified homes for local noble families. From these strongholds, lords dominated nearby peasants, extracting their resources. Lords governed their territories through force. In earlier times, peasants had formed important parts of infantry forces. However, new military developments, such as the stirrup, further established cavalry as the dominant military force. This new style of warfare demanded resources only nobles could acquire. Consequently, European elites became full-time professional warriors. In a world dominated by a warrior nobility, territorial control was achieved through vassalage. One noble granted another land and protection, expecting in return loyalty and military service. Kingdoms evolved into complicated networks of personal connections and reciprocal obligations. Kings were frequently weak and could be easily overshadowed by powerful vassals. Historians often describe this as the feudal system. Centuries would elapse before centralized states would reemerge in Western territories. During the 10th century, circumstances began shifting. Improved climate boosted agricultural production, external invasions ended as Vikings and Hungarians settled and integrated into Western Christendom, and in certain regions, royal power was strengthening. In Britain, King Alfred the Great and his descendants unified various Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, establishing the Kingdom of England for the first time. In West Francia, while political fragmentation persisted, Vikings who settled northern regions pledged loyalty to the Frankish monarch. They became French Christians, known as Normans. The Duchy of Normandy created a protective barrier against additional raiders. In East Francia, Otto I, king of the Germans, defeated the Hungarians at the Battle of Lechfeld in 955, ending eastern invasions. The settled Hungarians eventually founded their own Christian kingdom. The victorious Otto the Great received his imperial crown in 962. Europe possessed an empire once more, this time a German one. It later became known as the Holy Roman Empire. After centuries of chaos, Europe was finally achieving stability and confidence, ready to transform. The year 1000 represents a pivotal moment in European history, beginning 3 centuries of expansion and prosperity. Better climate, combined with innovative technologies and methods, triggered an agricultural revolution. Europeans produced more food, causing population increases. Fresh villages and towns appeared, while existing settlements expanded. Throughout Europe, forests were cleared as increasingly more land became cultivated. This enabled massive economic growth and commercial renewal. Thriving trade networks fueled enormous urbanization. Old and new cities expanded significantly, becoming international centers for an emerging merchant class. These merchants achieved independence from feudal landowners, creating self-governing cities. This was most obvious in Italy, where merchants revitalized Mediterranean commerce. As living standards improved, art, architecture, and music flourished. Europe was becoming increasingly literate, and the first universities were established under church supervision. European scholars launched a new renaissance, based on rediscovering and reviving ancient knowledge. But Europeans weren't only conquering internal frontiers, they were also expanding outward. During the Central Middle Ages, aristocrats from Carolingian heartlands conquered and colonized fresh territories, extending Western Christendom's boundaries. This process, described as the Europeanization of Europe, created an expanded and more uniform civilization. In 1066, William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, invaded England. At the Battle of Hastings, he decisively defeated the Anglo-Saxons. England transformed into a Norman stronghold. In Iberia, northern Christian kingdoms fought southern Muslims, gradually expanding their control across the peninsula. This was perceived as a reconquest. In southern Italy and Sicily, Norman warriors conquered extensive territories from Byzantines and Muslims. They allied with the Pope and founded another Norman kingdom. In Eastern Europe, German aristocrats and peasants gradually migrated eastward, settling on Slavic territories. But Europeans were looking even further. In 1095, Pope Urban II called upon Christian warriors to liberate Jerusalem and other sacred sites from Muslim control. Crusader armies poured eastward, establishing several states along Mediterranean shores. These states proved to be vulnerable Western outposts. Over 200 years, they were reconquered by Muslim forces. Nevertheless, they sent an important message. The Catholic Church had awakened. During the early Middle Ages, the Pope was weak, wielding minimal influence beyond Italy. The Church was a loose collection of priests and monks appointed and controlled by local aristocrats. During the 10th and 11th centuries, a reform movement emerged determined to transform the Church and society entirely. Reformers demanded the Church's liberation from worldly influences, extracting it from kings and nobles' control, and rebuilding it as a papal monarchy. Pope Gregory VII, an passionate reformer, clashed with Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV over authority to appoint bishops within the empire. The initial conflict ended with Henry waiting 3 days in snow outside a fortress at Canossa, begging the Pope's forgiveness. The second round, however, concluded with Henry invading and appointing his own pope, forcing Gregory into exile. Although it appeared the emperor had prevailed, the 12th century revealed that the papacy and reform movement had triumphed. The Church had evolved into a powerful, centralized, hierarchical organization. With elaborate administrative and legal frameworks and tremendous resources, its influence stretched across Europe. At the Pyramid Summit sat the Pope, governing the Church as an absolute monarch. As popes grew stronger, kings grew envious. Then they imitated this model. Medieval kings' power was limited by the armed aristocracy. During the Central Middle Ages, their numbers vastly multiplied, and castles proliferated, with wood being replaced by stone, and designs growing larger and stronger. Aristocratic lifestyle and culture underwent refinement with the Christian knight ideal's emergence and the code of conduct called chivalry. But simultaneously, aristocrats in certain regions faced emerging stronger kings and kingdoms. In England, the Anglo-Norman dynasty created a compact and consolidated state, free from the feudal complexity abundant on the continent. In Iberia, reconquering land from Muslim strengthened Christian kings, enabling centralized states to develop. In France, Capetian dynasty kings gradually expanded their personal territories, enabling a functional state to form there as well. However, in the Holy Roman Empire, exactly the opposite occurred. The once powerful empire fragmented, forming a patchwork of autonomous principalities. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa attempted restoring the empire's former glory but failed. The emperor's title, now granted by electors, became meaningless. The Central Middle Ages witnessed an agricultural revolution, urbanization, expansion, stronger popes, stronger kings, and vibrant culture. But around 1300, climate worsened, growth stopped, and famine spread. A tremendous catastrophe was approaching. The 14th century marks a watershed in European history. In 1347, a global plague now called the Black Death reached Europe. It rapidly spread throughout the continent, and within several short years killed approximately one-third of the population. It represented an unprecedented demographic catastrophe. Entire communities were completely destroyed. Recurring plague outbreaks continued striking Europe for centuries. However, during the 14th and 15th centuries, Europe recovered. And for some survivors, the plague's consequences weren't entirely grim. As population dropped, land became widely accessible, and labor demand rose dramatically. Peasants and workers' bargaining power increased, and they demanded better conditions, when elites refused. Revolts erupted throughout Europe. Nearly all were brutally crushed, yet, ultimately, change was unavoidable. In Western Europe, peasants gained fresh freedoms and opportunities, and workers enjoyed higher wages. From the Great Plague's darkness, creativity emerged. Technological innovation produced wind and water mills, eyeglasses, new metal production and processing techniques, and naturally, the printing press. In rapidly recovering cities, new cultural movements flourished. A new Renaissance thrived in Italy, dedicated to reviving and surpassing ancient Greece and Rome's cultural achievements. Renaissance scholars developed fresh perspectives on the world and humanity's place within it. They labeled the past millennium as Dark Ages, positioning themselves as the transition between medieval and modern times. In the late 14th and 15th centuries, gunpowder transformed European warfare. The bravest knight could be killed by simple infantrymen from distance, and the most fortified castle could be destroyed with cannons. Supporting the new infantry and artillery armies was expensive, which only kings could afford. As they sought to monopolize force within their territories, kings consolidated power and asserted authority over the aristocracy. These nobles, who lost military superiority, began serving rulers as administrators and courtiers. The sovereign state was emerging. During these troubled times, Europe's new military innovations were constantly tested. The 100 Years' War, fought between England and France, devastated the French countryside. The war's direction was reversed by a peasant girl, Joan of Arc, who rallied French troops against the English. Eventually, England was expelled from France. In Iberia, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile's marriage led to unified Spain's emergence. Their combined armies conquered Granada, the final Muslim stronghold on the peninsula. These developments established the foundations for the modern nation-states of England, France, and Spain. Other regions, such as Germany and Italy, would wait several centuries for unification. As the Middle Ages concluded, Europe had not only recovered from the Black Plague's crisis, but had also rebuilt itself on solid foundations. Gradually, its attention shifted outward. By 1500, Portugal had navigated around Africa and across the Indian Ocean, opening commercial routes to the Far East, while Spain turned westward. crossing the Atlantic Ocean and reaching the Americas. Columbus's voyage in 1492 is sometimes considered marking the Middle Ages end and the modern era's beginning. Over subsequent centuries, European expansion would reshape the globe and create the modern world we inhabit today.